not even like a big deal. It's more just like, it sucks because I actually know this. Like, I feel like this person's like a genuine good human being, and I would hate to like trash their, film that they were in. But, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean I need to review the film. And I think that's kind of like, that's kind of like the thing that I'm realizing. It's like, you know what? I could just do the interview and just ask them about their experience. That doesn't mean I need to share my thoughts on like the movie, because at the end of the day, it's an interview about them and what they learned, how they like what did they get out of it, like questions like that, like what drew you to this project, because I guarantee you it wasn't the Jesus scenes. I've seen two-thirds of the movie, so I've seen enough to make a judgment call. um they will like basically the grandpa has this book called, and it's like a retelling of Jesus's stories, but
Yeah.
it's like, so wait, did the grandpa just like go to the Bible and just like wrote? It's like this like it's like a school like notebook, like where it's in the middle it's the white space, you put your name, and it has like the classic like school design. You're like, oh, this is for my homework or my notes for my homework. It's one of those notebooks basically, and the
Mm.
grandpa, it's like, did the grandpa really like go back to the Bible and then wrote his own summary of? And it didn't really make any sense to me, but I'm like, whatever, I'll go with it. And every time, either the grandpa, the mom, or the dad read the story to their daughters slash grandkids, because there's a son as well. It like transfers you, like as if whatever they're reading, it's a musical note in the freaking fake reality that we the audience are seeing, but they're not. So it's like they're not experiencing this. They're just listening to grandpa say a bunch of words. So why is it a musical? Like, why are we so in my thought I'm like, are they supposed to be like knowing that this is a musical, this cinematic retelling, because they're not seeing anything. They're just seeing their old dead dying grandpa read them a bunch of words. I'm like, this is so confusing to
Smash
me.
cut to grandpa singing in the living room while telling everyone the story, and they're all like, what the is going on?
Right.
Honestly, that might be the final 5 minutes, and I
Guys, call
completely missed that.
911. Grandpa's having an episode. He's
It just I gave up after an hour. There was 30 minutes left, and I was like, yeah, there's 30 minutes. I don't care. I'm done. I am just poo-pooing on this movie, and I just feel bad now. Because people actually took their time with these musical numbers, and they took their time with obviously this project, because at the end of the day, it's not like they went to go make a crappy movie. I don't believe anybody goes in to make a bad
no,
movie.
and I've said before, any movie takes hard work to finish. I just think the faith-based filmmaking as a whole is so disconnected with where your natural moviegoer is at with their personal life that it just completely fails to connect. It's
Yeah, that's the issue. It doesn't connect at
it
all.
just completely fails to connect.
Well, it's like it seems to me that it's like they try to set up this like perfect scenario that will like frame everything in a context of like uh uh the Bible is perfect and everything is supposed to end up at the Bible, and everyone is supposed to come to the exact same conclusions that like we as a community or whatever come to. And so like we'll like bend reality to try to like fit into that, and it just doesn't work that way. Like, because there are ways to do it where it's like the entire thing isn't just some retelling of a Bible story, right? It's like there's so many other things to like being Christian or being religious, and like living your life in a world that may not be, or living around other people that may not be, right? Like all of that is regular, and it's fine. And I feel like those are probably more interesting like conversations there, because like not everything is so antagonistic, right? It's not always like, oh, some some like hateful, spiteful atheist or whatever is like coming against me, and you know, everything they do is an affront to God or whatever. And not everything has to be like just a retelling of like a scripture or something like that. Like there's more situations like that come into play with having whatever faith it is that you have. Like it doesn't all like center around like these perfect scenarios, right, where like they are just the good guy. Because I think that's another thing too, right? It's like if they have any struggle at all whatsoever, right, like most of the struggle is going to be either how to overcome the evil people that just hate God and like the religious people, you know, the Christian people, or they're having a crisis of faith, and then it's about like coming back to God. That's it. And I'm like, you cannot tell me that that's all the experience, like that's it for like every Christian in the whole wide world in all of time. No way. It's that, like I said, it's that like trying to take things into modern day, or trying to, again, you go back to the Bible and then you recontextualize things, or you fill in some of the gaps, right? You breathe some dust, or rather breathe into the thing to make the story really come to life, which is fine. But especially when you're talking about like Christianity, like there's over like 2,000 years worth of like stories and stuff. Like that stuff that was written, a lot of stuff was even before that time, and like is based on a whole other like religious practice, one that many of us Christians like don't even understand fully. So, you know, like since the death of Jesus, like there's been all this other time, right? So we can even talk about stories of those people. St. Augustine, you know what I'm saying? Like, brilliant guy, wrote a whole bunch of stuff that like changed philosophy, you know? It's like, why don't we see stuff about him? Why don't we see stuff about like him not necessarily arguing with, but trying to reason through certain ideas with his contemporaries, right? Like, it's just like things like that, right? It's like, but it's not, I feel like part of that reason is because it's not framed around a crisis of faith, or all the atheists are ganging up on me, and it's going to take all the prayer warriors and God, and we're going to change everything, and we're going to win because we're the good guys and God is on our side, right? So I feel like that's the thing, is like, it's like a lot of the people that go into making like Christian films or whatever else, right? Making these religious films, they're the ones that are making basically a call to arms film, right? It's all like we got to take our country back or whatever, right? Like a type of situation where it's just like, you know, it's usually like that. It's usually literally just that. It's basically just propaganda, which you can say like most pieces of art are, right? Like it's just, you know, but it's usually just that, right? Like we're the good guys and everyone, you know, should be on our side, and if they're not now, God's gonna get them around to our side, and that's it. That's the point, period, right? It's not really an exploration of like character or the world, right? Or even relationships, because everything is inevitable. Everything has a final destination. That final destination is a complete resolution of everything, where the atheist becomes a Christian, and the parent that was sick then becomes not sick because the atheist finally prayed and prayed to God, I'll give my life to you, and then if you save so and so, then right, it's like that kind of stuff. It's like the guy, the main character guy or whatever is like, my faith has been shaken because I learned about history or whatever. And then, he's got a pastor like, son, don't worry about it because blah, blah. It's based on faith and whatever else. And he's like, oh, wow, you're right. And then everything turns out fine and okay, right? It's like that, that's the thing. It's not necessarily trying to figure out, even like what you were saying, Jack, right? Like being in a situation where it's like, do I do this thing where I go a little bit softball, or do I do it to where I just avoid that whole section altogether, or like do I just pitch it the way I usually would pitch it, right? And that is like an interesting area because it really does just depend on where you are, right? Like everyone could potentially have a different response to that, right? But it's all based off of right, an internal position. And so because that, not everything has this nice, neat, straight line to like, oh, everything would turn out good in the end and everything was fine and everything was good. Like, no, it may or may not cost your relationship, right? Like there's real stakes. And I think that that's part of what those films lack. And so, when we are talking about like faith-based films or whatever else, I think that a lot of times it's people that are coming from that position, right? Where it's like at the beginning, you have the hero, the warrior, right? The one that's like for God and also the kind of stuff. Unless it starts off with the opposite, right? You have the wayward son, right? And then it's all about them coming back home. Again, there's nothing wrong with these stories, but the way that they're usually done is so that by the end, everything is just perfect and everything is in a line.
Yeah.
And that's it. And there's no actual exploration into the depths of the humanity of these people because they don't matter, right? Like they don't matter at the end of the day. What matters is whatever that final thing is. What matters is whatever the specific intent of that person, whatever it was that they wanted to say, just came across. Versus a lot of the people that like are of the faith that could actually make really good films, don't make those films for that very reason. Like they just won't touch them, because it's like, if I come out and I do this thing, people are already gonna like assume a certain kind of thing about it, right? So it's like certain things that are done by people that are Christians or whatever that like don't a lot of things that are done by Christians or whatever, but like you don't realize that like that's what that story is about, and it's a really engrossing story, and you don't know that that's the context in which it's being made. But yeah, because it's like almost when you say, oh, it's a Christian film or a faith-based film, right? It's like a whole bunch of people are like, yeah, I'm not watching that. Like most of those, I would just watch like just for the laughs, because I already know in my mind when I hear it, like, oh yeah, it's going to be a certain kind of way. But if like, to Tim's point, it's like, where are these people, right? The people that are really great, like filmmakers and that can make like really good faith-based stuff. And I think that that's why we don't see them. We don't see them because a lot of times they care more about story and about character, and that's what they work on, one. And then number two, because it's like a thing where you just don't touch it with a 10-foot pole, right? Like making that a genre that you put yourself, or a label that you put on it, right? Because it could potentially just destroy everything. I can imagine that the whole industry of that, of like getting funding and like certain connections that you get and all that other kind of stuff, is like a whole other kind of beast. So if you attach yourself to certain kinds of things, there may be certain attachments that come along with that, on the other end. So Yeah, that was a bit of a tangent. Once you slap that label on, it's like, okay, there's this one thing that it all is, and that's just pretty much what it's going to be.
Or you
So,
have like the Hollywood take. So you either have the super cheesy, because at the end of the day, that's just what it like to me. A simple term that is such an issue with Christian movies and shows. The Chosen is the exception, though, because they just made and I can go on talking about that in a second, but at this point, first, I want to establish the issue with Christian stuff in general when it comes to entertainment is that it's cheesy. It's not believable. And there's, like you said, there's no stakes. And when they do try to throw in stakes, like, oh, the husband that likes to do bad things when he closes the door, and we've all been there, fellas. Like they go over it so like as if grown-ups can't handle talking about struggles like masturbation.
The way that
it's
they present his
Yeah,
porn addiction
yeah.
in Fireproof is so funny. Have you
It's so
seen that
funny.
movie?
no,
Oh,
no.
it's a Christian tradition
Like,
to watch that movie.
He's
like,
just
it genuinely is.
He's just like, I don't even know. He's just like checking his email or something, and an ad comes up on the side of just like a girl fully clothed, smiling, and it says, "Want to see more?" And his mouse is like hovering over it, like, God, I do want to see more. I was like,
I want to see a little bit of that ankle showing.
oh man.
Oh, that's the Mormon stuff right there, man. Ooh, the shoulder action. Yeah, and like that's just what it is. It's comical. Like they show these issues and it's just funny. Like here's the thing. Dear old grandma, Mary Sue, who just loves those movies, she's going to be fine with it because she's like so accustomed to that. She's not trying to look for,
Yeah, she's
a
already watching the
Shakespearean.
Hallmark Channel.
Yeah, so she's good.
It's
That's her
fine.
entertainment. And I don't want to I don't want to poo-poo on someone's parade where it's like, if you like those movies,
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah,
I
have a
think
blast.
I'm not alone here, but I think a lot of people don't like those either. But hey, there's also a lot of people that do. So, fair game. You
So,
do what you want. You
I
watch
guess
what
we
you
need
want.
to have an episode on faith-based filmmaking.
Oh, we do. we do.
Apparently we do, because I feel like we've already produced like a half an episode before we talked about anything to do with sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
That's kind
it's
of
a
that's
good
kind of
combo.
why I just kept going with it, because I'm like, I mean, we're already here in the conversation, so like, I mean, it's a little bit of a, I wouldn't necessarily say hot takes, but I mean, it could obviously piss a certain like demographic off, but I think that it's kind of like what I was referencing earlier, right? With like, if you give a critical review, right? As a critic, right? If you give a critical review of this film that got sent to you for review, right? It can go over poorly, where these people no longer want to maintain a relationship with you, which, to be honest, might not be a bad idea, because if it's terrible, I mean,
There's hey, that's real. Like I just noticed my audience. It's the seniors. That's who's coming for these shows and stuff. And hey, that's a reality. It's genuinely old people that be watching this Christian stuff. And it's like,
yeah.
hey, I'm not judging. It's like that's just facts. That's just numbers. Not saying there's not younger people, but generally, sorry,
Yeah.
it's the older audience that is going out to watch this. Like when Dune Part 2 is out in theaters, everyone else is watching that, and then you have the diehard committed Christian community fans who will go watch that and be like, this is my Dune Part 2, and it's like, yeah, there's no comparison. Yeah.
I understand though, Jack, like you have a vested interest in like good Christian filmmaking, but it attracts an audience that is perpendicular to the movies I know you're really passionate about.
Oh, and this is the
Yeah.
thing crazy is that like genuinely, I don't know if you guys ever seen an episode, but like The Chosen is like done in such a way that it's like it could have been made by you could be like, it's such a good show. I wouldn't be surprised if someone was like, yeah, I'm not even a Christian and I made this. I just thought it was a genuinely compelling story. It's kind of like Darren Aronofsky, who made Noah, which got a lot of critical fight between, not just critics, audience-wise, it was very divided. I actually thought Noah was pretty interesting with Russell Crowe, but it's that same quality, right? Like CGI, compelling performances, but then you take that and you put it into a Christian show. Like, that's genuinely what The Chosen is to me, where it's like, oh, this actually looks good, and they actually went out and got actors that are like on NBC shows or movies that aren't just Christian, and the people that are like genuinely, when I was talking to the actor, Philip, great guy, he said the best thing about this is that, you know, like, yeah, I work with other people who believe, that's cool, but like, this is like one of the rarest occasions where I worked with people that don't even believe. And it's fine, because that's reality. That's real life. You're going to run into people who follow the same creed as you, and that's fine. Like, I can still be their friend. Like, I don't need to make it weird. And then it is cool when you meet other people that are like, yeah, I believe too. Oh, this is so cool. Like, we get to create this show. It does help in the experience when you make something that you believe in too. But the thing that's dope is that it's not like a show that's closed off. Like, oh, you're not a Christian? Well, you can't be the DP. You can't be the light guy. You can't do the sound. You don't believe. It's like, no, they don't care about that. They care about the talent.
Yeah.
And I think if Christian Christian creators, I should say, did that approach like Dallas does, we would be getting more than just we'd be getting tenfold of The Chosen. Like, it just, to me, it's not that hard for them to understand. You want something to not get made fun of, then you need to actually give a crap about what you're putting out and not just ask your cousin from South Carolina to make your movie.
Yeah. Also,
like,
dollars to donuts, these sets either cannot or simply are not offering high enough rates to attract higher quality staff, crew, talent.
Yeah.
It's going to sound goofy, but there's a marked difference in the caliber you attract depending on what you pay people. There just is. If I offer someone to be in a short film and I'm going to give them $50 for 2 days of work, anybody who needs an extra $50 is going to show up. Like, anybody who thinks to themselves, it's anybody who needs $50 is going to show up. But if I offer $1,200 for 2 days of work, that guy who needed the $50 might still show up, but you're also going to get people who are going to say, I'm worth $1,200.
Yeah, and like, then there's obviously people who are, you know, the people that they pray that comes in that are talented and are just enamored. They're just amazed by the story, or they're captivated by it, and they don't care if it's free work. Like, there are those auteurs, like artists out there, but for the most time, it's people who want money. Like, it's a job at the end of the day.
We got to start our episode. What are we talking about? Are we talking about sci-fi or faith-based filmmaking?
I'm fine with continuing the combo that we got. It seems like
and I just started recording. Like,
okay. All right. I guess we should have an intro. All right. Hey everyone. My name is Tim.
Hi everyone. My name is Rich.
My name is Joe Poppy Curtis.
And welcome to episode 8, 9, 10 of Rich's Audio is Weird Again. We're glad you could be with us.
It's gonna be a long running gag. It's like as soon as we got it like sounding good, then it's like nope. So yeah.
Originally we were trying to figure out what we were going to talk about today, and originally we'd settled on talking about science fiction films, movie, and literature, which I do think would be a particularly interesting topic because it's one of the genres that I have some semblance of frustrations with. But we started talking about faith-based filmmaking and we got lost in it. So now that's what we're talking about. And probably a bunch of stuff we talked about already is going to be edited to be in front of this. So I get to look forward to doing that. Thanks, guys.
Hey.
Thanks.
It's our pleasure.
Thank
It's
you.
our pleasure to do that. I guess I'll give a little bit of context. So I recently had the opportunity, and I'm not going to say the projects because I want to respect the people who made this. I'm not even going to say the title of it. So if I'm pretty sure I already did. Let's bleep that out as if like I was cussing, because I really, really think at the end of the day, before I even start, it's a hard task to make a good movie. So
period. Full stop.
I want to say that front hand, just like that is not an easy task. But anyways, there are bad movies, and this one that I didn't even finish is a bad movie. I had the pleasure to screen it on my lovely 65-inch Samsung TV. I love you, Samsung. And I couldn't finish it because it is so cheesy. Like, at the end of the day, like, for me, Christian movies, guys, like, it's a cheesy issue. Like, we'll probably already, like, bring this back up on the front because I mentioned it earlier, but I'll just reiterate it, that at the end of the day, for me, the issue with Christian films is that it's cheesy and it tries to bring real issues and real stakes, but how it's executed is just so poorly done that it makes the viewer laugh. And it's, like, almost a parody of the issue that they're trying to make it be so serious that it's just not serious. It's like a parody, and it's so frustrating because I want these movies to actually be good. Like, because for one, I am a believer, and I think also Jesus loves quality. Jesus loves excellence. I feel like Jesus would even watch this and be like, "What the frick is this?" He
performs miracles, but the tables he makes are like really they're not good.
No, you'll be watching there's a scene in this movie where Jesus is. It is so funny and so bad, but I guarantee you,
I probably
Jesus
have to bleep that out too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad, this scene that happens, guys. You're not prepared if you watch it. But yeah, I think that's like, I could go on for another 10 minutes, but bottom line, it's cheesy. And the reason for that is because of the execution, especially when they want to bring relatability. And it just, it's a quick error for the human, for I gotta be better with my work life, I gotta be more attentive to my wife and kids, and with that quick error that happens in their life, it's a quick fix, so you don't feel the struggle. It's just like, oh, here's this Bible verse, John 3:16. Oh my God, it is not realistic. It is so dumb how they do it.
I am No, I get what you're saying. I'm just having a hard time articulating it. I mean, can we just all agree right now that the best faith-based film is Jonah, a VeggieTales movie?
Yo, there it is.
Any VeggieTales is better than basically all live action.
Can we just all come to the realization that the best faith-based filmmaking is about CGI produce?
Yes.
Yes, and featuring one of the best songs ever from the Newsboys, "In the Belly of a Whale."
Yeah.
I'm swimming with fishes here.
The Newsboys have found their way all over faith-based filmmaking. They are just everywhere. And the school that I went to for like video and stuff, they edited like a lot of their big music videos.
Ooh.
I think they edited God's Not Dead. They did the one, I forget the name of the song. This is what it is. This is who I am. This is where I finally take my stand. Fun fact about that music video: I was not a part of it, and I never would have been, not back then. And I don't say that as a matter of choice. I say that as a matter of, I don't think I was viewed as a viable option for working on that. All that aside, everything with that video, went wrong.
Yes.
So the guy in charge of the school showed up, and he's like, all right, we ready to film it? And the Newsboys were like, yeah, but actually we're thinking about switching the song. When they showed up to film, the Newsboys told the production team on site that they wanted to switch the song from a different one to that one. Isn't that insane?
Yo.
Do you have any... Oh, man.
That's a nightmare.
So basically they were like, okay, well, we're just going to walk on the streets of Mexico backwards while you lip sync the song, and come what may. And they managed to cobble, like, a good music video together, but, like, everybody from my school was just like, well,
I would have done the same thing. Like, what the frick do you mean you're switching the song?
If I was, man, I would have been like, oof.
Yeah, for me, it's like, see, that's the thing. It's like, if I'm a producer in that situation, like, it really depends on, it really depends on, like, the working relationship between myself or my production company and...
I don't know what the relationship was like between the guy in charge of it. I have no idea.
Whomever their, like, representation is or whatever else. Because, like, as a producer, I personally am pulling the plug on that. Like, I'm not dealing with clients that are doing stuff like that.
Well, the problem is that everybody just got there on a bus from Texas to Mexico.
No.
What do? You just well, that was fun. Bye.
That's right, because you were saying it's a school thing. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole thing about getting.
I would argue it's in kind of an ethical gray, because it was a school that I would say was doing a lot of operations as a business.
Yeah, because for me, I'm like this is why, like, you may have, like, deposits, or, like, we need this amount up front, and, you know, that's, like, non-refundable, whatever else, this kind of thing.
It could have been. I don't know.
Because it's like, if people do stuff like this, like, again, it's up to the discretion of, like, you know, whoever the head of production is, to whether or not they're like, okay, we're just going to do it, we're going to go ahead and like push through or whatever, or whether or not they're like, yeah, we ain't doing this, or like, we need to reschedule, like, this has to be on another day now, because we don't have any of the materials or even the crew to do what you're talking about doing now. You know what I mean? Like, this literally changes everything, like, from a budgetary standpoint to like just everything. Like, if I'm talking about, like, you know, location releases, and, like, you know, just like getting proper.
I would mostly agree with you, except for having seen the music video. Having seen the music video as many times as I've seen that music video, it very much has the feel of, like, and I don't even mean this in a bad way, but it's thrown together.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, there's this mentality that kind of came into it where it's like, well, our client just threw a wrench in, like, what all of our filmmaking plans were, so we'll just give it to God and come what may.
Yeah. See that, I feel like that's another component of, like, what we're talking about with, like, this, like, faith-based, like, industry, right? And, like, with films and like production, is like, there's kind of this, like, code to it, right? It's almost similar to, like, with church, right? Like, somebody does something wrong, or, like, they exploit someone or whatever else, and, like, most of it goes unaddressed, and, like, people just have to be like, oh, well, you know, we're just gonna give it up to God, or you know, like, they'll come around, or, you know, one of the elders will talk to them, or pastor so-and-so will talk to them, and then, like, you just never hear about it again, even if there's, like, another offense or whatever. And
yeah.
You know, I from the things that I've heard with that kind of stuff, like, it's like, it's an interesting thing, because you're dealing with, like, an entire like belief like dynamic, which comes with hierarchies depending upon like how you believe, right? And what different kinds of like denominations you may be in, right? So like in certain ways, some people may be able to exercise certain kinds of authority over you, and you feel like you can't say anything, or you can't go against the grain, or whatever else. I think someone had made a joke. It might have been Jack actually, that had made the joke about like, yeah, just like getting your cousin from like wherever, like Nebraska or something like that, to come and work on the film, right? It's like, some of these people are giving out like homie hookups, like, oh, this so and so from my church and whatever, which is cool. You can give people that don't have an opportunity to do stuff. However, I think it opens up the door to poor quality. I think poor quality from a standpoint of like, you have people that don't really have the training or the experience, and by training I mean just like literally doing a thing a bunch of times and like gathering skill in that, not necessarily like going to a school.
It creates
or whatever,
a culture of favoritism. That's what it does too. It's a culture of favoritism, which you see that all hands in like a lot of aspects with man-made Christianity. And you're definitely going to get that in filmmaking. If you see it in some other buildings, you're going to get it also in that building. Where they go, they follow. So it's just kind of like, the quality's going to dip.
I agree, Rich. Faith-based films have a lot of convenience, and it kind of ties a bow on it by just kind of being like, God did it.
Yeah. That's it.
It's first off, I think it's I think it looks bad on the writer, for one, because it makes me feel like they couldn't come up with a solution to their own problem. And I'm not saying that. I understand that the idea of faith-based movies, like, oh, well, God's bigger than anything. But I don't think that means that every solution has to be miraculous.
That's a good way to put it.
It could just be, the solution could be God just gave you that bit of strength to put your head down and get through some.
Yeah.
Like, it really could just be something like that. But it seems like it, like, even what I think one of the better faith-based movies that I have seen might actually be Facing the Giants, but it still does that, where at the end it's like, oh, they won the football title, and it just like hard cuts to like a year later. Like, part of the movie is like, they haven't won any titles, they're the worst team in the league, and the main character's wife can't have children. And then at the end of the movie, it cuts to, after they win their first trophy, it cuts to they have 2 trophies and she's pregnant with their second child, and then the movie ends. There's no like real in between to what led to all that. Like, there's none of that middle ground of like, all right, we're a good team now, how do we stay that way? What worked, what didn't? The whatever doctor's appointments they may have had to make to even have kids in the first place. I honestly kind of feel like I'm just left to assume that their bodies work normally now. Now they can have kids. Ta-da! Yeah. I like wash my hands of it. Like,
a magic wand.
The writers of faith-based films are the Pontius Pilates of our times. I wash my hands of this. God did it.
Yeah, there it is.
Not my problem anymore. God did it. Ta-da!
Yeah, that's funny. That actually is a really good point, and I think you're right. And I think it goes back to that point of like the point of the story is not the story, and it's not an exploration of character. It's not any of that. It's about just getting to the end. If we can just get to the end and get to the God did it part, then we made a successful movie. Like that ends up being it, really. Like if you can make something to where, like I said, there's kind of like these archetypes where it's like either you have the wayward child, right, who is like they grew up in a religious home or whatever else, and then something happened and they turned away from God, right? And so the story is about them returning to God, usually because a bunch of people told them, there are a bunch of people sprinkled in the story that told them, you know, God really loves you and you should be back to God. And then they're like, no, I don't like God anymore. God sucks.
I'm Kevin Shorbo and I'm mad at God.
Right. And then
that's the plot twist of that movie. The plot twist of God's Not Dead isn't even that he doesn't believe in God, it's that he's mad at God.
Yep.
Which is, I'm sorry, that's lazy.
Yep.
It's lazy.
But
lazy.
It's not lazy if the point is that God did it. You see what I'm saying? That's the point. And that's what I meant by like, but you put it in such a better way than I did. But it's like that's exactly what I was saying when I was like the point of the story isn't that, like it has nothing to do with all of that, right? The thing itself is just propaganda. Like it's just a way, and I don't mean that, like I know it has a certain connotation to that, but I'm not giving it a negative connotation, right?
What?
But
like
just
the propaganda, that word?
Yeah, calling it propaganda. Yeah, like
I understand what you mean. Like
yeah.
I'm assuming we
I'm
all
just letting
grew up
people-
in the church, right? All three of us?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we all grew up in the church. So like we
Yeah,
I know what you mean
understand
when you use the word propaganda. It's just that word is like an alert word to people.
Exactly.
Because people are just like, propaganda, that means Marxism. Propaganda, that means communism. It's
right. And also I know people don't like things to be called like propaganda or whatever. Like it has a negative connotation. That's why I was like, I just want to be clear to everyone that like that's not what I'm saying. But just that like it was there not to explore the thing, but it was rather to exploit the thing. Like the whole point was for it to just be a vehicle or a shell to get into your mouth, and that like, oh, it's God that did it. Like that's it, and that's why.
The end.
That's why it's like for them, it's like it's great because that's the point, right? And the people that watch these films, that's the point. They want to see everything lead to God did it, and like everything was great. The even the bad guys turned into good guys, or if they didn't, then they died or something terrible happened to them, right? And so it's like it's that, but we don't really have an exploration into. I mean, you brought up a really good point. There's so many questions about like, okay, so what happened in that passage of time, right? Like, what did they have to go through in order to have kids, right? Like that in and of itself, if you want to talk about a struggle in faith or in just like dealing with life and trying to contextualize your life and its relationship to your faith, right? Like that is a really great and interesting thing to explore, especially because there are people that deal with that, right? But they cut it out because it didn't matter anymore, right? It's like, oh, they won, and then it's like at the end, see, now they can have babies. See, they won another trophy. So that's what happens when God is on your side.
They
Everything
earned
is
God's
good.
favor by winning the football championship, and now he'll allow them to have children.
You know, that's what it is. That's all it takes, you know?
Also, I think there's some storytelling that the church is afraid of.
Yes. And that's why it's off screen.
And then there's some storytelling that the church is what was that movie? I'm trying to remember. Unplanned?
Oh yeah. There's
You know
like
about that
rated
one,
R.
Rich?
The
No,
abortion
no.
movie.
Yeah, all Abby
Uh-oh.
Johnson ever wanted was to help women. As one of the youngest Planned Parenthood clinic directors in the nation, she believed in a woman's right to choose until the day she saw something that changed everything. It's an R-rated faith-based film about an abortion clinic.
What's the
Now,
studio?
um, let me see. Hold on. See, I haven't seen this movie, and I don't know if I
I
ever really
haven't
want
either.
to, so I don't know how much I even really want to say about it. It's just Mike Lindell was an executive producer.
Well,
Try to sell pillows on set. Please, guys, please help me. Guess I just don't personally trust that everything and all of its nuances with the situation so complex as that is going to be shown accurately or fairly.
well,
You know?
no, it's not going to be, because that's
No.
not the point, right? It's again, it's propaganda. Like, they're not exploring anything. They're not like trying to create an interesting scenario that'll get people to think. No, they already know what it is they want people to think, and that's what the whole point is. Except it's not going to get people in there that don't already think what they think, and
Yeah.
like and change those other people's mind. No, it's not what's going to happen. It's almost like what people say is like virtue signaling, or whatever. In a way, it's like trying to be the most Christian, and like I was saying about the like earlier before, about like rallying the troops, right? Like, it has less to do with like telling people that they're wrong than it is about connecting with other Christians about like how much they hate something, or how much they think that like their way is the better way, or whatever. And like just bolstering the, just like a rally cry is more so the thing. And so unfortunately, you take something that actually could be very interesting, and you doo-doo all over it. And
Where's the faith-based movie about the woman who will die if she doesn't get an abortion? Show me
and
that
that,
one.
and that's an interesting. And the thing is that in and of itself is an interesting story. To your point, Jack, like when you were talking about like, what about miscarriages, right? Like, your point was like not necessarily just trying to make things dark, but the fact that that happens, right? It's like, why don't we talk about it? Why isn't that in the thing? Especially if we're talking about like, you have these characters, these people that aren't able to have kids. How? Like, a lot of times what happens are miscarriages, right? Like, at a certain point, they stop telling people that they're even like that the wife is even pregnant, because every time it gets to like a certain point, they miscarry. I know, because I know several people like that, right? So it's like, but that's reality, right? And it's like, I feel like there's such a huge aversion to that stuff, because like I mentioned before, Tim, like, it's hard to write. It's hard to actually, period. It's hard to write.
Yeah.
It's hard to write. It's hard to do anything, but it's especially hard to write. And so that's number one. And then number two, it's because in exploring those things, there's literally no way that you can come out of that storytelling process and that character development process with complete empathy and not be transformed in your idea and your approach to people that are in those kinds of situations. It's impossible for you to. It's impossible, because in order to actually write well, you have to understand the world that you're building, right? Even if it's close to reality, it's never reality. You're building an entire world, one, and then number two, you're building the rules of that world, and then number three, you're building people and the relationships between the people, and the relationships between the people and the world. And so it's an incredibly intimate process. which is what again makes it so difficult. But when we're talking about like again not going to a certain place because you're afraid of what may come to the other side, right? It's like this insecurity of like if we explore this topic, people may become a little too sympathetic, right? Like if we show more of these characters or do whatever, right? People may get the wrong message out of it that we don't want, right? Like, or even internally, like I don't want to acknowledge that there's like certain parts of this that I actually identify with or whatever, because it might expose me. You know what I'm saying? It might like there's a certain facade that I can keep up, but if I like explore this idea or write this or shoot this or direct this, right? Like it may cause people to look at me differently, or there's a thing I don't even want to explore within myself because there are certain questions that I'm scared to ask because I feel like it'll lead me down a path away from what I believe or away from, the group of people that I identify with or, so on and so forth, right? Because it can lead to a real like identity crisis, especially when, again, you are writing, when you're acting, right? Like, because there's a certain like headspace that you have to be in. You have to inhabit something completely different. And so, some people, it's just a process. But again, it's like, of the things that we've talked about and that we've watched in that religious realm, how many of them do you think explored or even thought about any of what I just said? Just like conceptually.
Like
I can almost say
like hard questions, like
yeah, like all the stuff that I just said, even talking about like coming at it from like a technical perspective, from a storytelling perspective, like all the things that you need to do. Like, I don't think any of them do, and you can tell by the.
I would say three do.
Okay.
Three. I can think of three, at least right now. Maybe, and this is not including VeggieTales.
Oh yeah, no, those are classics.
I can think of three. The original Ben-Hur.
Okay.
The original Ten Commandments.
Okay.
And Passion of the Christ.
Yeah.
Like, to me, those are probably some of the best movies that have had Christian themes with complex characters and nuanced situations. But they don't fall into the box of like faith-based films. You would probably say that The Passion does.
Yeah.
That might be the closest one to that box. I think I saw Ben-Hur in middle school. We had like where I went to school growing up, our Wednesdays were half days, so I think we spent the entire half day watching Ben-Hur. Also, Ben-Hur, if I'm not mistaken, is tied with Titanic and Return of the King for the most Oscar wins. I mean, back in the days of like Ben-Hur, the Ten Commandments, filmmaking was not accessible to just anyone.
Yeah.
But now that it is, people who don't know how to use it have it.
Yeah.
And now we have a bunch of people who are Christians who want to be filmmakers as opposed to filmmakers who are also Christians.
Yeah. It's like the same concept with like artists. Like there's like an artist like Lecrae who does not want to be in a box. he wants to be outside of that box, and I think he's done a really good job with that because he is a rapper who so happens to be Christian, and who's done that tremendously even better is NF. And it's not losing your heart.
You know you're big when you've made it all over the YouTube shorts. Man, NF is all over the YouTube shorts.
That man, he's a very smart dude. He's been very well. He's just executed his career very well when it comes to like what his mission is and what his heart is. But he doesn't lose like the ability that he's obviously a believer, but it's not shoved in your face, and it's not like I'm a Christian rapper. It's no, I'm a rapper. I'm an artist too, so I happen to also believe in this. But I also talk about suicide, depression, anxiety, real things that affect people. And I think the same thing can be said about filmmakers, where, you know, that was a good point where there's just a filmmaker who so happens to believe in Jesus, and it's like, that's great, you know, more power to you. And if you have certain projects that correlate with your faith, that makes a very interesting experience. Like, for example, one of the most powerful films of all time is Schindler's List, directed by someone who I believe is I think he considers himself a practicing Jew, Steven Spielberg. He may not know what it felt like.
He's still practicing.
I guess so, or at least at that time he was. But like, he's someone who, you know, didn't necessarily go through the same exact experience, obviously, in the 1940s, but he has, like, within him, in his blood, that's a tie to him. So he has a passion to tell this story, and it's probably going to still be considered the greatest live action rendition of that time period. People still talk about that amazing film, and it helps because he had a part to play with it in the sense for his ancestry.
Right.
So it's like, if that same heartbeat could be captured with this type of material, faith-based content, it could be amazing. When you have stories like Ben-Hur that were so epic, they also shoe in a little bit of Jesus in there. It makes it even feel more real, where it's like, oh, this story's so good, the human characters are so compelling, the dynamics are so interesting, and then you realize Jesus is there in the midst, and it's like, whoa, that didn't feel shoehorned, that felt very organic. And we're missing that organic, epic feeling with these stories, because Jesus actually is a very epic story to tell. It's not just something like, whoa, let's make a sermon out of this. And that's the issue. They want to make a sermon out of these movies. It's like, it's not a sermon. You're making a movie.
Yeah.
You are making a piece of entertainment. At the end of the day, movies are entertainment. Now, like saying, I was entertained by Killers of the Flower Moon, a 3.5 hour movie where Native Americans are being tortured by the white men. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that's an entertaining film, but it was an insightful film that was a necessary historical watch. The same thing could be said about the story of Jesus, where even if you don't believe in it, it's a historically epic series of events. And people are missing that. And I think it's just kind of crazy that the people that believe in this make it look stupid. That's my issue at the end of the day. You're making Jesus look like he's a cheesy mother trucker when he wasn't. He was a hard mofo. Jesus, like, went in, flipped tables. He said, you're messing up my father's house. Get out. Get out. I'm gonna whip you up. Like that was Jesus. Jesus was a cool cat. And these people are making Jesus look like he's a schmuck. And oh my God, I'm getting passionate right now. Like, it's just, it's annoying.
Say you have the Passion of the Christ?
Oh, I do. The Passion of Christ Part 2, which is coming out next year, by the way. Crazy. 20 years since the first one.
That's so strange
20
to
years.
me.
Yeah. And Revenge of the Sith. That's stranger to me. Ooh.
Let me see. Okay, yeah. He practices Judaism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, it's just that relatability, right? Like, I bring it up for that reason, where I think maybe these filmmakers do in that sense, but they're not doing a good job of capturing that kind of, like, that heartbeat, because that movie just felt genuine. And it was also filled with terror, just absolute terror, which does make the experience feel a bit more real. I'm not saying that all these Christian movies need to add some terror. But one thing I'll actually bring up here is a film called Cabrini, which is actually coming out by this time. The video will probably be out by the time the movie's already out, but as of right now, it's not in theaters yet, but it will be dropping this Friday because we're filming on a Sunday. Do yourselves a favor, bros, like check out the trailer at some point. It's called Cabrini, and it's the story about this Italian woman who is a nun, and she gets called from the Pope, I believe it's the Pope, to go to New York and help the needy, the widows, the orphans. She wants to go to like China, I believe. She wants to start, like, in her perspective, big. But they're like, no, you need to start in the east of America. Because I guess during that time, it's like 1909 or 1899, and there's disease, people are dying left and right, and he's like, you need to start your mission there. That's where I'm going to send you. I want to see how you do. Because her goal in life was to create this basically organization of all these nuns in different establishments around the world where she helps people. She helps specifically women and children. And that's basically the story. It's just about this super cool nun who wants to help people. Yeah, is she a believer? Well, yeah, she's a freaking nun. But you know that because of what she's wearing and how she acts, but she's not saying, let me tell you about Leviticus 12:13. She's just being a good person, and it's through her actions, and it's through her just spirit where you feel so compelled. And it's a period piece. I love period pieces. And it just brings like this epicness to it, honestly, where you are just so committed to this character because they feel so human. And it's made by a Christian studio, Angel Studios, the same company that I guess helped originally with The Chosen. And they also made a terrible film that I reviewed, and I felt bad because it was like a 4. But there are genuine, like, and I just really want to bring that back up, there are actual good projects out there. It's like a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. Hello, for a Christian movie, that's freaking crazy.
You mean Cabrini?
Cabrini, yeah. And I don't even want to say it's a Christian movie. It's just a movie. Like, I think that's what Angel Studios is doing right. Yeah, they are clearly, they got faith-based stuff, but these movies that they do make, they're not, at least for some of them, because some of them they do shove Jesus in your face, but for some projects, they're like, we just wanted to make it a really good story about a good human being who did a lot of good things in this world. And I'm like, I'm gonna be signed up for that because I like dramas. I like period pieces. I like watching movies that do have sadness in it all over, but then there's this one little shining piece of hope. So that's a little shout out for that film. I actually did a review for it too. It's just, for anybody who's watching this right now, go watch Cabrini. There's actual good stuff out there. But for most of the projects that have happened for the last however many years are usually big pieces of doo-doo because they don't know how to tell a human story. They know how to talk about verses. They just don't know how to execute it with the character's actions.
But the argument to that could be, and I'm going to play devil's advocate, ironically enough, and I'm going to say that their goal is not to tell a human story. Their goal is to tell a divine story, a God story.
Yeah, well, that's whack. Here's the thing about it is...
it is whack, but
we're humans and not God. And so the thing about it is, even when you look at Scripture, right, like you're looking at humans dealing with other humans and also humans wrestling with God, right, in one form or another, right? Like we see Moses wrestling with God, telling him, don't kill all these people. Like, you want to kill them because...
Prince of Egypt! Sorry, I missed one. That's another good one.
That's a great one.
Yeah, that's a classic. That's a classic.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. But yeah, so you even have that, right? Where you have the OG that's like literally fighting with God, telling him like, my man, you can't do that. You know what I'm saying? God's trying to kill everybody. He's like, yeah, you can't do that because people are going to say you're crazy. Like, you brought all these people out here to what? To make them die? Like, that's crazy. And all the way past that, you know what I'm saying? Even if you want to look at the story of Jonah, right? It's like Here you had a dude that literally had one job. He was supposed to go and tell these people, hey, yo, look, God is mad at you. Stop doing what you're doing and turn your life around. And my man was, number one, basically a racist. He didn't like those people over there, so he didn't want to go over there. And then number two, he knew that God would spare them. Like, so it's just wild because here you have like this guy that basically is not a great guy, in my opinion. I don't know what his whole backstory is. That might be a cool, fun little movie in and of itself, a cool little story. But he was not a cool guy because he basically he did literally the opposite of everything that God was telling him to do. And he was doing that because to do what God was telling him to do was inconvenient for him, and because he didn't like those people. And it was like he much rather them just get killed than for him to have to go over there and for God to actually save them. Mm-hmm. So even there, right, it's like you see this human and his interaction with God, which is like contentious, and God has to like make him go do it. Now, even within that is another very interesting story. It's like, well, why couldn't you just get someone else, right? Who were his contemporaries at the time? What was Nineveh actually like, right? It's like, why would there have been some sort of tension between Jonah and Nineveh, right? Like, what was going on there? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many more interesting questions than just like, oh, he got swallowed by a whale. Oh, wow, he went over there and they, you know, and then they turn their life around. You know what I'm saying? It's like, literally it ends with God telling him like, yo, because it was hot outside, and then a plant grew to shade him, and then the plant died. And Jonah was hot. He was mad, bro. He was so pissed. That's what we can tell. Those are the stories that we can tell. So, and I feel like that's why those stories, the way that they often try to tell them, feel disingenuous. There's no actual stakes to any of it because we know it's all going to turn out like all right. You know, like that's just, it is what it is. But it's because it's in the context of God and not in the context of man dealing with God or man dealing with man. The things that you actually want them to explore, they don't talk about at all. You get a hard cut to everything being fine, and you don't know why. You don't know why. It's like something happened. It was God.
Because they gave it all to God and he blessed them.
Right.
Off
he
screen.
Blessed them. Exactly. Off screen.
Credits.
Right. And it's like, but we don't know if it would happen that way. What if it didn't happen that way? There's plenty of times in the Bible where things don't happen that way. Lazarus died. God let old boy die. And he died. He was dead for so long that he stunk. Jesus came, cried for old boy, like he didn't know he was about to resurrect him, cried for him, and then resurrected him. Who knew that was finna happen? Who knew? I bet nobody knew. So
I mean, there's plenty of stuff in the Bible that I'd like to know more about that's off page.
That's what I'm saying, right? It's like there's so many interesting things there, and that was just an example of that's just an example of the unpredictable nature of, if we want to talk about this faith and this religion in particular, about the unpredictable nature of this God and this God's relationship with mankind. You cannot predict this God. You cannot make this God do whatever you want him to do whenever you want him to do it. It's all in his own time and according to his own will and purpose. It's not according to yours, right? And that is a very interesting and intriguing thing to explore, because then it's like, what do you mean and what do you mean, right? It's like, what do you actually know at the end of that? And I feel like that amount of uncertainty and that range of belief, right? The way that you can stumble upon different kinds of belief, even within the same context, or even within the same like genre in a way, right? It's like you have all of these other different things, and you can even explore that, right? These people that are really on the, if we boil it down to this, you have people that are really on the same side, but because they have these minor differences, right, it creates this huge rift between them, right? And you can explore those concepts, because what do we have then? We have mankind wrestling with mankind, right? These are the stories that we can tell. But whenever we try to do something where we just take God, who we don't even understand, right? Like, yes, there are certain like texts that we have, right, and understandings that we have, but as far as like a being in and of himself, we do not understand him. It's impossible for us to understand. And to just be like, hey, yo, guess what? Boom, he's the answer whenever we want. Ta-da! Like, it's just insane. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? Even when we look at it from a standpoint of, right, like if we look at the Passion of the Christ, right? It's like, when you're seeing an old boy get whipped up and also the kind of stuff, and the devil with the snake and all that stuff, like, you like, oh, okay, like, so ain't nobody saving nobody right now. Like, he is caught and he ain't getting out, and he is getting whipped. And you like, okay, when's the story gonna turn around? Yeah, nah, dog. Like, he is finna die. Like, then you see him die, and old boy talking to him on the cross and all that stuff. They all beat to death literally. And then you see old boy stab the thing into his side. You like, oh, he is dead. This is it. Like, it is over. And it's like, even in that situation, it's like you're expecting, okay, God, he's gonna come in, and then God is gonna be like, oh, no. He's breaking out of this one, like it's a magic trick. He got substituted for whatever else, which is what another religion actually believes. But
he pulled a prestige. There's
exactly.
actually like 10 clones of Jesus. You just killed one of the clones.
Exactly. Or it was like, oh, it was all in a dream. No, it's like when you realize, God didn't save him, dog. Then you're like, oh, okay. Or when you're at a point where you're like, yeah, he was not moonwalking out of that one. Like he like, old boy was on that cross. They broke my man's knees. Like, that was it. He wasn't up there a long time because he was doing a circular breathing magic trick. He wasn't doing a thing where he was healing himself while he was up there to make it easier. Those kinds of stakes and those kinds of stories, it wasn't a God story. It was a man story, and a story of man wrestling with God. And in all aspects of that, even at the end when Jesus is like, yo, why have you forsaken me, dog? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm here upon you. You see what these people doing to me. Why are you letting me do this? But at the same time, I know what you're saying, let your will be done, yada yada. But at the same time, it was like, even there, we had a man wrestling with God situation where he's like, bro, what is going on? You know what I'm saying? Like, you got me doing all this stuff. These people don't even care about me. You know what I mean? Like, they all betrayed me. They're not listening to me. They're all stupid. And here I am. I did all this stuff for all these people, and you got me suffering like this. It's not even like I could just go lay down somewhere and die. No, you got me going through all this. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's another part of like what made that so captivating, because it wasn't like now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. Like, he didn't just get on the cross and then just die. You felt the emotion of him being there more than just out of like the gore of it and the nastiness like of it, which was interesting to see. I don't necessarily know if I needed to see all that to know he was in pain and suffering, but I get why some people needed to see that or whatever, why they had to do that. But like, you could just see in it, like, even if they would have just almost skipped to him, like, on the cross, to where he was just carrying it up there and they weren't even showing him getting all the lashes or whatever, and they just skip through that because of the way that it was written and the way it was performed and the way that it was shot, you would still get that same emotion of a dude that's like, I'm screwed. Like, I'm really screwed, and I hate this, and there's no way that I can get out of it. So, like, I'm abandoned, and this is how I'm finna die. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm not going to say that I have nothing to say about this, but I am going to say that I do want to circle to the moral quandary we have on the table. So the moral quandary we have on the table is a faith-based production staff reached out to Joseph and said, will you review our movie? And he doesn't like it, but he has interviews and stuff lined up. Like, he's kind of got, like, plans for what to do with this, except that the production isn't good. So, does he do the interviews and the review, or does he just do the interviews and spare the review? What do you think, Rich? What would you do in Joseph's shoes?
So the position I take on it is, okay, short and sweet. I would have that conversation with with the person I'm interviewing or whatever. Ask them about what their experience was on the set, how they feel, in doing the production and whatever else. See what comes of that conversation. There's probably a lot that they're not going to say, obviously, while on camera. They do have to work, and I know there are certain things that, they may wait till off camera. They may wait way down the line. But I'd ask them more so questions about how that experience was for them, and like those kinds of projects in general, what drew them to the project and that kind of thing. I would still do the review. I do the review because, that's why they sent me the film in the first place. And in that review, I would, it's not my industry, that whole review space or critic space, but, I just let people know, disclose to people, hey, yo, look, as a critic, this is the way sometimes things go. We get some things in order to review them or whatever. This was something, that I got from them. And so I'm going to review it fairly or whatever. They're wonderful people. You see the interview, it's a great interview or whatever. But I do have my own opinion on it. And I'd go into, my opinion. Obviously, there's a way to do it gracefully, where it is constructive rather than, destructive. Where you can go into here are some of the problems that I had with the film. I can see what they try to do here and there. I just felt like there's some technical issues. Here are some things I saw with the writing. I felt like, the actors may have had more to give, but were unfortunately limited by the material itself, and that kind of thing. And I think that it could be navigated in an amicable way. And I think that in doing it that way, that it could potentially afford. I think that number one, it would really strengthen your audience's appreciation for you and also trust in you as a critic. And I think that it would also then make other studios or publicists or whatever respect you as well, in your integrity as a critic or as a movie journalist or whatever, because they know you're going to be straight up with them about it. And I think it'll kind of put you in a little bit of a different league, because I think especially in the creative space, there's this thing of desperation, and so it's people will do anything and say anything just so that people will keep sending them stuff, and so I think that by doing things in this way, you also project to them that look, if I don't like something, I don't like something. And it's not I'm even just gonna take a big dookie over it. I know my reasons why, and I can give actual criticism and constructive criticism for things that could have potentially made it better, but I'm not gonna sit here and play softball with you just because maybe it was nice to work with you, or because of whatever, but that, like, I'm a critic at the end of the day. That's who I am, that's my profession, and if you're coming to me, you should know that, and you should respect that the same way I respect that you make films, so that would kind of be that would be like my approach to it.
Yeah, I for the most part agree with you, Rich, and I think your review, I think it can be divorced from your interview, because your interview has nothing to do with the quality of the movie. Your interview has to do with their experience on the movie, and if they learned anything new on this set that they're going to apply to their next piece of work, and your interview with them doesn't have anything to do with whether or not the movie is good. I'm sorry, let me reword that. It doesn't have to be about that. There's not necessarily a need for it to be about that. I didn't see all of it, but the parts of your interview that I saw with the actor from The Chosen, the parts that I saw had nothing to do with whether or not you thought it was a good show. It was like, hey, you were in Assassin's Creed. Did you play those games? I didn't realize it was that guy. I thought that was pretty cool. It's the guy who played the original Altair. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah. I found that out when we were messaging on through DMs. I was like, oh my God, this is the guy.
Yeah, that's super cool. But I mean, your review can be divorced from the quality because you're talking about different things. I think you are good at what you do. You are a good critic. You're a different critic from me. You and I have very different opinions, but it doesn't mean I think you're bad at being a critic. But I do think interviews are a different ball game, and I'm not saying you're not ready for them. I think you are ready for them. But I think you are capable of structuring your questions in a way where the interview has nothing to do with your opinion of the final product. Because they go to your review for your opinion of the final product. They go to your interview for her input. For their input.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They don't go to the interview for your input. They go to your review for that. So they can be completely separate things. I think you can still do it. And you know what? If they don't send you something else because you gave their film a bad review, I do not expect for them to create better movies in the future. I do not expect them to get better at what they do if they completely nullify any negative or critical feedback they get. So, I mean, what are you losing, really? You're being spared, honestly. You don't have to watch another bad movie. Now, some people might say, well, how would the audience know what it takes to make a good movie? They don't know what it takes to make a movie at all, let alone a good movie. Okay, I mean, I don't want to get super duper metaphorical, but that's not a fair analysis to make. Like, let's say, for example, a football coach knows what it takes to make a good play. But if we watched a game where all the players were just all the different coaches, I gotta tell you, I think it'd be a drag.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a drag because the audience is capable of knowing what they like and what they want to see, even if they don't know how to make it happen. It's the filmmaker's job to figure out how to make it happen and to determine if what their audience is craving is compatible with what they're making. There's a distinct possibility that the story that this studio put together that you did not enjoy simply is not compatible with any form of mass market appeal. It is not compatible with anybody outside of the Christian ethos, just that sphere, or as some pastors would say, the sphere of influence. Or
That's
as one
powerful.
pastor that I know has put it, the Metron. Uh, a word I've never heard any other pastor use.
That's fire. The
The
Metron. That's
Metron.
crazy.
Isn't that's a good one. I can only think of Megatron whenever I would hear him say it. I just heard Megatron. I'm like, and Jesus will allow you to operate in your sphere of influence, in your Megatron. Oh my gosh. uh, but I think you're capable and ready for this. And you know what? Like I said, even if there is some backlash, honestly, the worst backlash you can get is from your viewers, not from the studios.
Yeah.
And like I said, the worst the studio can do is spare you watching their next bad movie if they don't take any feedback to heart. Okay. Cool.
Man, that's
mean,
why
Ted-
I appreciate, like, what was it? Yeah, Dallas. He commented, and I actually said a negative in my review.
Yeah.
It wasn't just all sunshine and rainbows. I was like, there's pacing issues. Like, there'd be moments where, excuse me, there'd be moments where the dialogue just keeps on going.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got to know when to land your plane, because especially when it's worse when there's a moment where it's like, oh, it should end right here, and then they just keep on talking. It overstays its welcome and it dilutes the impact of the scene. I hate moments like that, because it's like, this was so good, and now I'm gonna remember this as, wow, can you guys just shut up? Like, it and that happens so much, honestly, with Christian films too.
Now,
But it,
I don't
like,
think
he actually commented, said like a positive thing about the video, and
Yeah.
they were like, he takes criticism well because he wants to always improve,
And that's
what every
fantastic.
creator-
And I would actually go as far as to say that in the sphere of not even just Christian filmmakers, but Christian leadership, taking feedback or criticism is rare.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I would say it's rare.
Well, because like, especially in the creative
I think
aspect,
that's good.
no, yeah, like especially if you're creating something, like, you don't want too many hands in the pot, because that's when it gets messy, especially when you're creating something. But it's always good to have, hey, could you take a look at this? Let me know what you think. Not like 10 other people, but like this one other person. Get their thoughts, and it could change your whole outlook on what you just created in a better way. And I think people who are allowed to be vulnerable, because it is a very vulnerable thing. Like, when you create something, you are kind of letting part of you out there in
Yeah.
a way, which, man,
Yeah.
like, it's not an easy thing to do.
Here's-
Even like creating this kind of stuff, like, this is us, like, we are putting a form of ourselves out there, in a sense. Obviously not as creative, we're just talking, but still a form of ourselves. So there is a level of like, ooh, what are people gonna think? Especially with a movie that has money on the line, people's jobs, people's respect, like, how they're going to be looked. Like, at the end of the day, people who are in this film, some people are going to remember them, but not in a great way. And it's like,
Yeah.
dang,
Yeah.
this sucks.
And I mean,
Ugh.
are you going to finish the movie?
I think I might even mention that in my review. I'll be like, this is a 70% review, because I'm going to be honest, I didn't finish it.
Rip.
Like, I genuinely feel like, I gotta be honest, like, I don't want to put myself through another 30 minutes of, I know what's
Yeah.
gonna happen.
No.
And
I do think there's a little bit of a
Ugh.
game here, and I don't think it's necessarily a malicious game. It's almost like a I think the game that's kind of at play, but no one's talking about, is who shows their hand first. Do you give your review first, but maintain your interest in an interview, or do you do the interview and then show your hand later?
I think how I would,
AKA
and
post your review.
I think I technically need to post my review when the movie comes out, so it would be interview this weekend, and then when the movie comes out on Monday, I drop
Yeah.
the review on Monday.
See, that's the part of this that feels like a little bit of a game to me, and it's almost like you have no choice but to play it. Because if you post your review and they're like, wow, he hated this movie, well, we don't want someone who hates this movie to be doing anything regarding the publicity of this movie, so we're going to pull the interview. I would do the interview first. Me personally.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the
No,
game
yeah.
that no one knows.
Yeah.
No one acknowledges that they're playing, but they're playing.
No, yeah, and it's
I
like
see
not
what
even
you're
like out of
saying.
like it's not even like out of malice that I would do it that way. It's just like they even like the way it's laid out like on a strategic level. It'd be the interview and then review,
Yeah.
and especially because I guess like I don't know when the review embargo is for this thing, but I'm just gonna assume
I'm assuming
it's
it's going to be on the
release
release date.
day. Yeah, because some projects they have it like a week early, 5 days,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
day
yeah.
before.
Video games do that all the time.
Or it's the day of because they want as many tickets as sold. That's the reality.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That happened with Madam Web. Bad movie. But is this one worse? Ooh, I don't know.
Well, you
think I'd
finished
rather watch
Madam
Madam
Web. You
Web.
didn't walk out of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I'd rather watch Madam Web.
But I feel
Let's
like you
say
are
that.
less prone to walk out. If you were in a movie theater, I bet you would have finished this. I don't think you would have
at
walked
that-
out early if you weren't home, and you could just click
It's because I drove.
my autofocus. Click.
There we go. It's because I would have driven out there. I would have bought my popcorn, my candy, and
Yep.
my water.
Would you
And
bring
I
your
would've been
Dune
like,
your Dune 2 popcorn bucket to the movie?
Not for this holy
Would you
film,
bring your
but
pop
for any-
to the
for Dune Part 2 any day.
pop
Oh my gosh.
bucket?
Oh my god.
By the way, guys,
Have you seen
It's
that
been
thing,
an hour.
Rich?
No, I have not.
Google
where is it?
Dune 2 pop. You have it? Look at this thing, Rich.
Let me suck you off right here.
Look at it.
Yo, that is too much.
Oh,
They seriously basically made the popcorn bucket a sex toy. There's no way
Hey, dude.
around it.
You
There's
should
so many-
actually
around it.
you should actually put that clip at the very beginning of this. No context, nothing. Just put
I'll
that
be
there,
so
and then we just
canceled.
go
Don't you
straight
dare.
to.
You do not have my
Intro to
consent,
the
Tim.
faith-based filmmaking episode. Do you have the pop
Right.
bucket?
You know, baby. You gotta get ready.
To put an answer to your question, Jack, I think you can do both. I think you can do it well. I don't think this is like a make or break, like your career's going to come apart if you make some kind of a mistake here.
No.
Like, I personally view this as like a pretty low-stakes situation.
No, yeah. If anything, I'll get all the Karens being like, "How dare you not like this great Christian film?" It's like, okay,
Yeah.
shut up, Grandma Karen.
And you know
dare
what I
you.
thought about too? I thought about like, think about how many other people got like sent this to review, and they're just gonna rip it to shreds.
Yeah.
I'm saying like that's the thing. It's like you're probably gonna be one of the mildest critics of it, outside of people that are
And
just
you
like,
didn't finish it.
yeah, like that's the thing. It's like you're still gonna like, you're not gonna be an ass about it, but you're gonna be like, yo, like I could not finish this. But think of how many other people like just are
it's
not
brutal.
gonna care, and they're gonna be brutal. So yeah, it's it'll be all right for sure.
Like, it's gonna be like, and I think maybe it's not even necessarily so. Okay, there's something that Chris Stunkman kind of did, and I kind of admired it. But then there were some people who were very mean
Talking
about
about
it.
when he took the numbers away.
No, when he talked about like Madam Web, he like did a video about Madam Web, but it wasn't really a review. It was more about Sony and how they treat these characters. It wasn't like, I'm gonna talk about Madam Web, because he's basically made a stance about like he doesn't want to talk badly about films.
Yeah,
because
he makes them now, and
Yeah,
I
and it's like-
do understand that he's part of the
Yeah.
filmmaking community now. And
So it's
honestly,
like-
it's not a big world. It looks
It's
big,
not.
but it's not.
he's like one of the first ever to be in a situation like this where he is known for his reviews, but he's also a filmmaker. So it's like
yeah.
kind of playing Switzerland, which I don't think is a baby move, which is what some people are saying. They're like, be a man and say the movie sucked, Chris. It's like, bro, he actually already established his channel is about movies that he loves.
Yeah.
And he'll still do reviews, but he's not going to review a movie that he absolutely hated.
Yeah,
Which clearly he did.
He took
He
number
obviously
rating off
hated
the
it.
table, I think, kind of for that reason. And
Yeah.
I understand that. It's hard to be comfortable putting you're quantitating people. Before he was quantifying. He was quantifying people's work, putting a literal number on it, or in his case, a letter grade. But now, he's kind of entering a world where if he keeps doing that, he's doing that with people that he knows.
And or works with, potentially, could be people that he could work with.
Or works with in the future, yeah. So, I mean, I would understand the notion of wanting to be much more careful with that in the future. I don't think it means, like, you can still put criticisms on the table without being like, and with that said, 3.5 out of 10, Because even if you say all that, that's what's going to stick with someone. They might not even like remember what your criticisms were. They'll just be like, I can't believe my friend gave me a 3.5 out of 10,
And honestly, this whole thing is such a good like conversation for this part, because I don't even know if I'm going to give it a grade, because number one, I didn't finish it. And in a sense, it wouldn't even necessarily be a review. It'd be more like, here's the issue that I have with Christian films, with most of them.
Yeah.
And it's because of this, this, and this. And obviously, this film has sparked that inner, angry conversation that I have inside of me. And yeah, this movie's not that great because obviously I didn't finish it. And it's because of this, this, and this.
Yeah.
But instead of just talking about
that's
that the
actually a
entire
really
time,
good approach.
Yeah.
because like,
And I would say that if you do decide to grit your teeth and finish the movie, that could be a part of the review. It's just like, I had to watch this in 2 sittings because I couldn't do it all. And I didn't even want to do the second sitting.
I only got 30 minutes, and honestly, I'll probably because usually I'll watch like TikTok or YouTube videos on my phone before I go to bed. I'll probably finish it like that and be like, okay, let's see. Okay, Jesus, that's great, love it, 10 out of 10. And I'm someone who was looking forward to what was that movie called? The Book of Clarence.
Oh
yeah.
Such a disappointment. Like, I don't think it's a terrible film. I gave it I think I would have give it, I forgot what's the highest I gave it. I think I gave it a 6. Like, it was fine. It was okay. But to me, that was disappointing because I thought it was going to be like an 8 or a 9.
It seemed like a really interesting concept. It seemed like it was going to be cool.
6 is harsh for you.
It was disappointing. Like, I really wanted to love it. Like I said, I don't think it was like bad. It just, there was a lot going for it. And that was also made by Hollywood, by a dude who does believe, kind of. You also have Jay-Z, who is a producer. So, yeah, Jay-Z is a producer for a Jesus movie. Ooh, interesting. But, yeah, I think that's the approach I'll go in, is mainly talking about issues that I have with Christian films. And on the plus side, there are people who believe that are just good filmmakers. Go watch Cabrini. Go watch The Chosen. They know how to do good writing, getting good people who know the craft and are great at it.
Go watch Ben-Hur. Go watch Prince of Egypt.
Oh gosh, Dune Part 2 gave me like some feelings that I had when I watched The Prince of Egypt as a kid. Like some big moments, like epic moments. It brought me back to that feeling. Like, this is like the closest live action adaptation of like a Prince of Egypt kind of movie to live action. It was very different kind of stories. Like Joseph randomly says, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Yeah, there it is.
Boom.
Yep, there it is.
It's the end, boys.